React Native developers, in this lesson, we're going to look at transitions. Transitions are the easiest way to animate React Native components. And in this lesson, we're going to build a nice transition from this state here to this one. So you have a nice spring effect. I like the bouncing. The gesture is, of course, completely interruptible. And here, the state is toggled or not is a React Native state, a React state, but it can be as well an animation value you decide. And so I have this table here of transitions. You can either transition from a change in React state, and here you're going to use timing or use spring, or you can transition on a change of animation value. And for that, you're going to use with timing and with spring. So this is great to really add some nice animations when your React state change, but also transitioning on animation value can be extremely convenient to decouple animation problems. So it's a very powerful tool because you can write your gestures and animations in a using discrete states and then do the transition. So in future recipes, we'll see how that comes handy. These functions with timing and with spring are shipped with reanimated 2. So you get it by default. These functions, use timing and use spring, are shipped with redash. So you could directly use these functions and be done with it. In this lesson, we're going to learn how to implement use timing and use spring. These are very easy to implement. I just think it's a great exercise. Even though you're going to use this function directly, you're not going to re-implement these functions every time. It's just a great exercise to see how reanimated 2 works. So to rebuild these functions. And these 2 functions, which are provided with reanimated 2, with timing and with spring. Again, I think it's a great exercise to rebuild these functions ourselves. We are not going to do it in this lesson, but in a future lesson. Because, yeah, if we can build these functions by ourselves, then we really understand how reanimated 2 works. And this will enable us to build great gestures and animations down the line. So let me switch to the code here. And we have the boilerplate project, which you can use in case you want to code along with the example. So we have our state toggle that we pass to the card parameter to decide the transformation. So if we go in the animated card, there are no animations yet. We look, is the state toggle? If it's false, it's 0, like this. And if it's true, we do index minus 1 times pi divided by 6. So pi is 180 degrees, pi divided by 6 is 30 degrees. If index is 0, we rotate to minus 30 degrees. If index is 1, we are at the middle. So 1 minus 1 is 0. We have a rotation of 0. If index is 2, 2 minus 1 is 1. We have a rotation of 30 degree. So we're going to create our use transition. And what we're going to do is create a shared value that follows the React state. So we're going to create is toggled, which is a used derived value. Used shared value. And the value is 0. So here, default. I mean, actually, it doesn't matter. I could have a different default. It will work. And what we want to do is when the state toggle change, we assign, if toggle is true, we assign 1. If toggle is false, we assign 0. And we're going to use effect for that. So as a dependency, we use toggled. And is toggled is dot value is, let me put this into a block because we don't want to return anything, is, so Actually, here it can be a Boolean value as well. I'm so used to reanimated one where we can only have numbers and strings. So we assign, I probably need to add isToggle here as a dependency. So we assign isToggle, and from there we can create a transition using use derived value. So use derived value creates an animation value based on other animation values. So we're going to have use transition is used derived value, and we're going to return. It can be with timing or with spring. With spring of is toggle.value. So now we have the transition, which we can pass instead of toggled. So here we get transition instead. I'm going to put here any for now. And here, this becomes an animated view. This is an animated style, which we're going to compute using use animated style. So style equals use animated style. So we're going to return this style. We need to calculate rotate based on transition. So we can use interpolate to do that. Interpolate on transition.value. Input range 0, 1, output range. So you see here it's a new function signature for interpolate. A bit more convenient, 0, 1. And so we go from 0 is 0 and 1 is index minus 1 times math.py divided by 6. And let's have a look. So you see here we have a nice transition. Here, when we interpolate always from 0 to 1, redash provides a function called mix. So we can remove this part here. It's just a bit shorter. And here we can use with timing instead. So now here you see you don't have the bouncing, you have a timing function. And what we can do here is to refactor this transition into a function. So the one where you're going to use from redash. So we can make this into a generic function. So it's going to be transition equals use spring, for instance. And you pass toggled as state. And so let's create this use spring function. Use spring. So we have the state as parameter. So let's copy these things here. So we need to create a shared animation value for the state. So we're going to have value is use shared value. And here, if toggled, so if the type of state is a number, we assign the state directly. If not, we look. So if not, it's a Boolean, and we need to do 0 or 1 depending on if it's a Boolean or not. So then we do state is 1 or 0. So this one becomes value state, and we return the transition. So the nice bouncing effect. So we have built use Spring manually. So we're always going to use this function directly. I think it's just a good exercise for us to understand how these things work. We can do use timing quickly. So it's going to be same, but we're going to use timing here. And we can add like maybe a config that we can pass to the animation. We can do the same also for Spring. And so use timing, and let's say duration 600 milliseconds. Use timing. Do I need to import with timing? Yes. So you see here we have the 600 milliseconds use timing. Now, one thing we can do also as an exercise is that what if we transition on an animation value and not a state? So this is going to become an animation value. So now React doesn't know if it's toggled or not. So we're going to have toggled is use shared value. And I'm going to use 0. I think I am so used to use 0 or 1 from reanimated 1 for booleans. I forget that we can set now animation values to be booleans. But here, the toggle, we're going to use toggled dot value is. So let me set a boolean here. Toggled is false, and we assign the opposite value. I think that looks good. And here we can create a transition. So transition is use derived value, and we return with, let's say, with Spring of toggled. Let's have a look. Sorry, toggled.value. And here it is. So here you see the reset label doesn't change because, I mean, it thinks it's always true actually, because React doesn't know, since it's an animation value, doesn't know the state. And these with Spring and with timing, it's going to be a great exercise as well to be able to build these functions manually, just to really understand how Reanimated 2 works under the hood. In this lesson, we looked at the 4 functions to get transitions. You can either transition from a change in React state or change in animation value, and then depending on the type of animation you want, if you want a timing animation or a Spring animation. These functions will always be provided to you either by React Native Reanimated or React Native Redash. As an exercise, we've wrote our own implementation of use timing and use Spring. I feel like there is also a lot of value in writing our own implementation of with timing and with Spring to really understand how Reanimated 2 works under the hood. So we will do it in a future lesson. I hope you guys enjoyed this example, and I'm really looking forward to see you in the next lesson.